Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our scholarly examination of Epic Illustrated Magazine. This is the October 1985 issue, number 32. We start off with it's I guess well-painted cover by Jerry Bingham. This illustrates a story within To Be a Champion. And in the overview, it's kind of a weird story. So I guess there was a new artist. Every now and then Epic Illustrated scouts out a new artist. And they'll basically like, we'll write a story for you. And they wrote this story about this woman with prosthetics. And then Jerry Bingham showed up without even knowing about the story. Said, hey, do you guys want this painting for Epic? And it was this woman. It looks like she's got this weird prosthetic weapon. So pretty bizarre that kind of serendipity happened for this cover. Yeah, he's got some skills as a painter, just seeing these trees and stuff. But I don't know, Jerry Bingham, I always found him a little bland. Very skillful. He knows what he's doing, but just his style leaves me a little cold. So let's get into this. Contents page, overview of creators. And we start off with The Last Galactus Story, Chapter 7, Tunnel in the Sky, written and penciled by John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin. Okay, Galactus is in this tunnel in the sky. Some cosmic being is so powerful that he's taken all these stars and made them into this pattern, like a tunnel. So Galactus is just like, even I, with all my infinite power, can't imagine that anyone would have the ability to do such a thing. And it's so funny how Galactus, we just kind of accept him because Kirby drew him so epically, powerfully. But he really is this goofy looking guy. He wears a big skirt when you look at him by other artists. For some reason, Jack Kirby could pull it off and you didn't think about it too much. But he really looks kind of silly. So in the center, after he goes down this tunnel, there's all these planets kind of tied to this machinery, or at least linked to it. And Galactus once again is like, who the fuck could have done this? This is crazy. All the planets are actually living planets. And so he decides to just visit one, crashes into one. And these little aliens come out. And that's the end of this episode. Not much there to go on, really. This is Predators, script by Edward Bryant, famous science fiction writer. And usually when Epic has adapted science fiction stories, the author's not involved. They don't have time. But Edward Bryant actually wanted to do this. He was like, I want to adapt one of my stories into comics. To figure it out how to do it. So they got this adaptation consultant, Leanne C. Harper. It sounds like she has some job in the comic business, but nothing creative. So it's kind of weird that she would advise him. And as far as I know, she's never written or drawn a comic book story. I guess Edward Bryant knew this commercial artist named Carol Kimball. So basically, Edward Bryant kind of packaged this whole thing and brought it to Epic. It's kind of a nice character study. This woman, she's trying to make it in the big city, not doing very well. She's thinking about her home. She kind of misses home, but she really wants to make it. Doesn't want to fail. And, a lot of the panels are just captions of her thoughts. So it does read kind of like a short story. And this woman always wears gloves whenever she goes out. Even if it's just to get her newspaper in the morning. She puts these leather gloves on, even though she's in a bathroom. She meets this new neighbor, this guy. And this guy's a total sleazeball. He's just kind of saying these suggestive things. She's just like, sorry, I gotta go. She's not impressed. Even though this guy seems kind of studly, because she always hears his lovemaking noises on the apartment above hers. He's always scoring with some chicks. And this guy is really aggressively, courting's not the word. He's just trying to get with her. And she's just like, come on, really, seriously, leave me alone. And this guy will not take no for an answer. It continues on page 91. Let's jump over there. And he starts getting angry. Like, because he's all charming and she keeps saying no. So finally he just, he's like this total, like, macho misogynist guy. Like, what, you think you're gold? You're too good for me? It's pretty psycho. He sends Valentine's under a door. He just will not accept no. And then one night she's got to go down to the laundry room in the basement of this apartment building. It's nighttime. She's a little worried. Because even before this guy came into her life, she was kind of scared of the big city, all these strangers. And of course, that guy was waiting for her. And he shows up. And he's basically just saying, like, oh, don't even try to run. He's threatening her. He's just like, you're going to get it now. And she takes off her gloves. And she's got these crazy, weird claws coming out of the tips of her fingers. And then we just see the wall of the laundry room coated in blood. And then later on, she's showering. Pretty good story. Pretty not so good art. Yeah, I never have seen Carol Kimball again, and I'm kind of glad. Never saw her before. I guess this is her first comic. Who knows? Maybe she could have gotten better, but I doubt it. It looks pretty shitty. Here we have a beautiful drawn story by Bo Hampton. And we see this time traveler guy gets in his time machine. God, this just looks like great EC science fiction comic art. And this guy just decides to go back to the age of dinosaurs. And, he's kind of talking to himself. He's, that old trope in time travel stories, he can't kill anything. Or he can't change the future. He doesn't want to. So he's having a gay old time, just living, roughing it up in the Quaternary era. He's having a great time. Sees some cavemen hunting a saber tooth. And this guy he's a smoker. So he's really careful to, pick up his cigarette butts and everything. So he sees all these cool, ancient creatures. And he gets cornered by Sabretooth, though, and he has to kill him. So he's like, oh, shit, I better get back before I change anything else. And as he's traveling back to the present, his present, he sees, artillery in the 14th century. Because as he's speeding towards the future, he can see kind of what he's passing by. He's all like, World War II happening in 1766. Everything's happening too fast. When he gets back to his own era in the 23rd century, there's already been a nuclear war. Because things have gotten, warfare and everything else progressed faster. Because of something he did. And he gets to this bridge to survey the land. And he reaches for his cigarettes and realizes that his lighter is missing. So he left his lighter back then and the cavemen found it. And just that, these cavemen developing fire, maybe a million years before they would have, or hundreds of thousands of years, changed everything. What a dummy. See, smoking's bad for your health. Here's the story that the cover is based on. And this is Jay Geldof. I forgot he was in Epic. This is his first story. He was showing off his portfolios and Epic like the cut of his jib. And so I believe Archie Goodwin wrote the story for him. A little sci-fi story. Jay Geldof you might know from Grendel. He did some Grendel stuff. he inked a lot of guys. But he had a very, like, I don't know, 80s style. It was almost like a new wavy style. Oh, you know what? He was in that Threat magazine from Fantagraphics. That Threat magazine had 3 different serials in it. He did one of them. I can't remember which. I never really read that comic. But it's kind of an interesting style. So I guess there's these 2 opposing warrior tribes of women, like Amazons. And one of the armies has this woman with this amazing weapon. A prosthetic arm. And she's from the city, this like more advanced city, and these marauders are trying to take it over. This woman was kicked out of the city, this woman here with the eye patch, so she's got a grudge. And so her leader says, hey, if you can go in and steal that weapon, any reward will be yours for the asking. Jay Geldof really likes to draw women's asses, I noticed from reading this comic. So she succeeds. She steals her arm. And she brings it back. And she realizes that she's going to have to sacrifice her own arm. So she chops off her arm and puts that on. So they're like, okay, now you're going to test your powers on this slug beast. And then all of a sudden, her gun, she can't control it. It just starts shooting all of her fellow soldiers. It's just like zapping everyone like a machine gun. And then we find out that this arm, it's designed to protect the Citadel and to cybernetically control any they're attached to. And the arm tells her, now back, slave, you have a job to do. And so basically now she's going to have to go back to the city that she hates, that kicked her out, and be their soldier, basically. Archie Goodwin always had, he just had so many great little ideas for stories. That's why I'm such a good editor, I guess. This is kind of nice. We have this portfolio of Cerebus. We've been seeing all the full-color short stories of Cerebus in Epic when he's a little kid. So I guess they figured a lot of people don't know the Cerebus comic, so they wanted to show the reader, this is what Cerebus is all about. Really nice art. Shows all the stages of Cerebus when he's prime minister. They do have one picture when he's a little kid. I don't know if this ever happened in the comic, because he was in some eastern land and is kind of like a samurai. Here's Cerebus as Pope. God, a great drawing. Man, this is a really boring story, I gotta say. But this art is something else. It's Gonzalo Mayo. And I'm sorry, I should have looked him up. I think he's from the Philippines, or maybe he's just Spanish. But, oh man, his art, this is it's got some of the inventiveness of Droulet, but more realistic. Look at that guy's face. Actually, that almost looks like Enki Bilal, but even more photorealistic. And the colors, the painted colors, just amazing stuff. This is called Nagril Rising. And basically, all these people in this world, this fantasy world, they hear a calling. It's they're like, okay, we all have to fight this menace, Nagril. It's coming. So soldiers, farmers, fishermen, they're all like, okay, drop what you're doing. We gotta arm ourselves and whatever, fight off this menace. So it's not much of a story. But man, this is some pretty art. Look at that. That's fucking nuts. I want to make sure it's on the screen good. Wow. This almost reminds me of something from like a children's Bible. Like if there was a really well-drawn children's Bible. There's something about it seems so like religious. I don't know why there's all these naked ladies here. Well, I kind of know why, but it's not very integral to the story. But I don't even think he gives a shit about the story in this. It's not much of a story. He just wanted to draw these amazing vistas and scenes. That's something else. That's pretty nuts. So they kill Nagrel, but an age has been slain. So Nagrel's dead, but it hasn't perished. Oh, I'm sorry, it's perished, but not without tainting all who remain. Now that there's no great mission, yeah, kind of humanity just goes back to its, whatever. What humans do. We just dick around most of our lives. It's not like we have noble intentions. Usually we're just like, oh, I want to eat a lot and fuck and have a good time. And of course, it gives this little foreboding note that, yeah, until the next threat arises. And then once more we'll be tested. Very odd, but pretty cool looking. Here we have the return of Layla Dowling, the artist. Great fantasy artist. And this one's written by Robert E. Rhodey. Robert E. Rhodey we've seen a few times in Epic. He does those prose stories. He did a couple that are always kind of humorous, kind of playing with fantasy tropes and stuff. And kind of satirizing them. But this is just a little typical epic type story, sci-fi-ish. Really like her doing this Japanese style art. It's pretty nice. Basically, it's a story of this guy who's just in love with this woman, and he just sits outside her house. Kind of a stalker. Writes her beautiful poetry. Just keeps asking her, when will you open the door for me? I love you so much. And she basically just says, I visit other worlds. I don't really have time for your romance. So he finally gets the hint and leaves. And the whole time this alien couple are watching this on their computer. And then this twist ending is that it turns out they have a computer. We thought it was like ancient Japan, or maybe it is, and they somehow have a computer from the future. And they've been watching that couple the whole time. So it's almost like it's like interstellar soap operas. They're watching them to see how their romance progresses, and they were watching this Japanese woman to see if she would accept her lover. Here we have another fucking advertisement. It's an article, but it's not. It's just an advertisement for the new Savage Tales. Get to see some Michael Golden art. It's never a bad thing. I got a bunch of these Savage Tales. There's some great shit in here. It was a really weird magazine. It was just Marvel trying to appeal to, the Savage Sword of Conan crew. Guys who didn't normally read comics, but were kind of, macho dudes. Herb Trimpe, doing what he does best, airplanes. Will Jungnuts, I'm probably saying that wrong. Jung Cunts. That sounds even more wrong. Yeah, this guy used to work for Neil Adams Continuity Studios. But we get some beautiful John Severin Westerns. That's worth the price of admission. If you ever see those Savage Tales, they're cheap. Nobody gives a shit about them. Pick them up. Because almost everyone has a beautiful John Severin. And then some other weird, interesting stuff. Here we got Mark Wheatley again. He was in, like, I don't know, the first 10 issues. This is his normal cartoony style. This one is it's an autobio comic. I assume it's just about his life when he worked at he was a manager at a supermarket. But then, of course, it's some fantasy thrown in. And there's this demon running through the supermarket, killing people. Oh, yeah, because the cereal actually comes with some, like, magic ring with an incantation. And he says the incantation. It's almost like he says, you know, Candyman 3 times. So it summons this demon. Demon's just going around killing everyone. Look at the supermarket. It's just, like, covered in blood and guts. And the demon's saying, I want your son, because I like the taste of young flesh. All these people are too old. And the big jokey ending is that he looks at the cereal box and there's some fine print. Void wherever tax regulated or prohibited by law. So he says, you're void. And the demon has to go back to his demonic realm. And everything goes back to normal. Yeah, pretty crappy art and story. Here we have chapter 6 of Toadswort to Amblestone by Tim Conrad. Once again, look at this art. It's fucking gorgeous. So I don't know if you remember where we left off, but Waxroth is full on nuts. He's released this plague monster on the land. He himself has the plague. And once again, he goes to his nether reaches, the nether reaches of Amblestone. His, like, crazy laboratory, sorceress, whatever place. Toadswort's been left in the jail to rot. And he looks out the window, his barred window, and he sees Shamshadow, the artist. We haven't seen him in a few chapters. And he says, come free me. So, Toadswort's, Shamshadow was hightailing out of there. He was going to go to some other town. He was tired of all this crap. And Toadswort's like, yeah, can I come with you? He's like, sure. But we have to rescue the princess. Let's go get her. Because I guess she's an innocent in all this. And then we see they run up to where the priest is. I can't remember his name right now. Father Pretense, that's it. And he's got these carrier pigeons. So it turns out he was the traitor all along. He claims that he's not really a traitor. He was just delivering messages to the bishop. Because, you know, the bishop is his boss. And that's his job. But they're like, but you know that the bishop is going to talk to the king. That's how he knew everything that was going on. And he's like, well, that's not my concern. I was just sending messages to the bishop. So they're still looking for the princess. And then the golem shows up again. And Toadswort notices that he seems confused, as if in pain. And he's hoping that the golem won't see him. And then right then, Waxroth blasts the door off the hinges to his chamber. It looks like he's amped up his magical powers. Looks like he's going full on Doctor Strange here. So the golem picks up Toadswort. And Waxroth is getting closer. Look at him with his fucking boils and stuff. And he's full on insane now. He just looks horrifying. Toadswort, like, kind of rips his shirt to escape the golem. love the way he draws the golem. That's some amazing shit. As is this, by the way. God, such nice stuff. And Toadsword escapes. And he's hoping that because he's small and he could outmaneuver the golem. And he comes to this one. He's trying to escape, and this room is flooded. And he's like, oh, shit. So next, final passage, which I believe is the last chapter of Toadsword, the epic conclusion. Here we have this is basically like a poem written by the late Gene Day. I think even in 1984, Gene Day had already died. So this is probably a leftover story. And his brother, Dan Day, illustrates it. And Dan drew very much like Gene. Not as good, but very similar. Definitely like his brother Gene, though, who worked like a dog. Look at the amount of detail in every blade of grass. Some say that's why Gene Day died, is because he worked himself to death. Because he couldn't lower his standards, even though he was doing a monthly Marvel comic with shitty printing that couldn't even duplicate all his lines. He just couldn't stop himself from doing the best work he could. And his brothers, he also has another brother named David, who's a cartoonist. And they both definitely do not skimp on the ink. I've never seen Dan draw this way, though. He's trying this pointillistic style. I don't think he's quite got it, though, because a lot of these characters look like they just have sand on them, as if they were rolling around on the beach. It's not quite working. Or it looks like they have freckles. It's still pretty well drawn. But I think he was trying out pointillism, you know. But man, yeah, some of these design work things are pretty labor intensive. I don't know if they exactly work or if they're that great, but I do admire the sweat equity, as they say. So there's basically this witch turns this oak into a human, because the oak, she can hear the oak saying, I want to love, I want to love. Doesn't really make much sense. So then they're dancing together, and then he starts to embrace her. And then she shoves him away and says, no man may love a witch. So it's kind of like, why'd you turn him into a man? I guess so he could love another, not her. And this guy's a fucking... this tree man, he just says death, and he strikes her to the ground, and then he strangles her to death just because she won't let him have his way. As the witch dies, so died the man oak, so he turns back into the oak. It's kind of funny there. Flesh returned to bark, bone returned to wood, and blood ran thin as sap. Love, cried the weeping oak, but none would ever hear. Just one of those typical things that would be an epic every now and then. Heavy metal, I guess, had stuff like that too, but they were a little more adult. But some of these little poem things in epic are pretty tiresome. So there you have it, epic number 32, epic illustrated, I should say. Pretty decent issue, I guess, overall. Just because, yeah, actually, it's one of the weaker issues we've looked at in a while. But we got more Toadsword, which is always nice. And some decent art from some of the artists. But yeah, not a high point, I'll say that, for Epic. But I hope you enjoyed looking at it at least. And I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.